So last week we saw Vibhishan had come and taken refuge with Ramchandraji. And there was this whole discussion of whether he'd be accepted or not. But Ramchandraji says that there's never any question, no matter who the person is and whatever it is they have done, they will always be accepted. And in fact, in this section of the Ramayana, because when Vibhishan introduces himself and he says, I'm Ravana's brother, and so I totally understand if you don't even want to see my face after what he has done and the life that we have lived. And the Vibhishan, this feeling of, in today's world, there's so much about this feeling of I'm not good enough. But in Bhakti Shastra, there's something called Deena Bhaav. And it's very easy to confuse the two. So I want to be super clear that it's not low self-esteem issues. Yeah. But Deena Bhaav is when we feel incredibly helpless. Like Vibhishan is born to that family. He's Ravana's brother, and there's just nothing you can do about that. And so there's this incredibly helplessness of this is the situation I'm in. And so all I can do is surrender. And sometimes there's, I don't want to deal, and all I want, so I surrender. Is different to there's nothing I can do, so I surrender. And these small differences make huge difference in terms of our evolution. When I don't want to deal with this problem, so please fix it, so I'm surrendering to you. Or it's also hard and it's too overwhelming for me. Even like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita felt that. And it really is a lot what Arjuna had to face in the Bhagavad Gita. And sometimes life really does give us a lot. And so that feeling of overwhelmed can also be seen as helplessness. And I surrender. And so now what you decide, I do. Versus, actually, nothing can be done. It just is what it is. And the recognition of how little control we have over, number one, other people, and two, just life and death. Circumstances, actually, sometimes we can change. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes we can. And in even circumstances, sometimes it's our perspective. We can just see it differently. We don't even necessarily have to change it. We can just see it differently. But there's so much in life where we feel we can do, but actually we can't. And so Deena Bhaav is that recognizing of how little power we actually have. And so here, when Ramchandraji is accepted Vibhishan, but he praises this mindset of Vibhishan where he has surrendered so completely. And it's because of this acceptance of, and this is why last week I really emphasized, Vibhishan did so much. Right? As a minister in the court, he really looked after Lanka. He really created morale. He set up structures. He was living dharma as best as he can because Ravana wasn't around. So it was Vibhishan doing all the work. And so you can see here, there's not this helplessness and not doing anything. He's done a lot. And after all that effort, after being courageous enough to stand up to Ravana, there's still this like, but Ravana won't change. And people we can't. That's why I said two things. Life and death we can't control, other people we cannot control. It's not a sense of helplessness as such, although it is translated that way. Deena Bhaav is translated as helplessness, but it's more a recognition of nothing. Our power is just so limited. And often Deena Bhaav gets used, and so Tulsidas Ji himself has incredible Deena Bhaav. Deena Bhaav gets used by Santa Mahatma like Tulsidas Ji because we try to control our mind. And we fail so miserably. This was really cute. We try to do these Instagram reels to try and somebody was seeing the latest Balvihar reel, and then I said, oh, that, it did so well. And I said, yeah, I'm pretending like we're very cool. So we're doing all these reels where, satsang is satsang, but you have to market it, right? So it has to be cool. And so there's this trend in at the moment where they hold one hand and they hold one hand and then they pull. And then some person comes and kisses the cheek. Right? That's the Instagram trend. Right? It's one of those cute ones, and usually it will be a mother pulling child or wife pulling husband. It's one of those cute trends. So I'll also follow the trend. So I told this mom at the camp, you have to pull and then your daughter will come and then she'll hug you. And then she said, but why are you doing this? And I said, because the reel is going to show that you keep pulling your attachments. Your mind gets pulled and you pull whatever you are attached to, your mind pulls it, right? And then we keep thinking about that. And so she was looking at me and then she looked at her daughter and she's like, yeah, she's my attachment. Like she wanted to say I'm not attached, but she was so clear that no, I'm attached. And the daughter's young, so definitely very attached. So we want to be detached, like that moment when she was like, yeah, I'm attached. We want to be able to be detached, or we want to be more disciplined or more patient and not get angry, or we want to. And then the mind is so hard to do, right? We want to be devoted, but we don't feel we are. There's so many things in our mind where, and then we feel helpless. But here I am trying to control my mind, and I seem to have such little power. Right? This Deena Bhaav. So Bhagavan, you please take my mind. That's Deena Bhaav. But when it's Bhagavan, take my mind, then whatever Bhagavan does, we have to accept. Usually we surrender, Bhagavan, take my mind and fix my problems. But once Bhagavan takes its his, then I can't dictate my terms anymore. Gurudev used to get all these gifts from people. And then, of course, how much can he use? So he would gift it away. And then people started giving him things, saying, but Gurudev, this you can't give away. And then, of course, from then onwards in the talks, he would say, but after giving it to me, it's still theirs because I can't do this and I can't do that. And I have to keep but if you've given it to me, it's mine now. I should be able to do what I want with it. Same with when we give our mind to Bhagavan. And that's why, like, we might say, Bhagavan, yeah, take my mind, but nothing changes because we're not really said. We're not really giving. We're still holding on to those attachments and those desires and those vasanas. But here, very super clear that Bhagavan praises Deena Bhaav, this surrender that comes out of the understanding that it doesn't matter how much I do, my efforts are not futile, because we definitely can make progress, but my efforts are having such little effect. Whereas surrendering, then the effect of surrendering is so much more. So, like, totally giving it to him. And this is Vibhishan's glory. When Vibhishan goes to Ramchandraji and says, I'm yours, he was ready for Ramchandraji to also throw him out. He was ready to be beaten by all the Vanara Senas because he's Ravana's brother. He was ready for whatever came. Of course, faith in Guru. Remember, Hanumanji had said, Ram will accept you. And those words come true. But that willingness to accept now whatever comes is that Deena Bhaav, that surrender of that. Like, anyways, I don't have control, so now you do, and whatever you do, we'll cope. And so often in life, I've noticed that. Like, when things are happening, what's the worst case scenario? And if you can get your head around the worst case scenario, everything else is fine. And it's very rare is it worst case scenario. It will usually be something a little bit better. But if you've already accepted that worst case scenario can happen, then it's, and this is Deena Bhaav, because it's not in my control. And so the more I fight what's not in my control, it's literally like trying to push the wall. I mean, usually when we give the example of me pushing the wall, at least my body gets strong. But here, no, even that doesn't happen because it's me resisting whatever the tide is of the flow of life. So Vibhishan is glorified as one of the greatest bhaktas. One, he served Ramchandraji while he was working for Ravana. Now, to have Ravana as your king and Ravana as your brother, but still be doing Ramchandraji's work, he is a great devotee. And then two, when he finally does go to Ramchandraji, there's this complete, whatever you say now, I will accept. And Ramchandraji calls him Lankeshwara, king of Lanka. In many ways, he earns this. Sometimes people will say that, you go to Ramchandraji and then you get this. He gave Vibhishan a whole kingdom. He gave Sugriva a whole kingdom. It's there in that Chalisa also, right? Like, he gave Sugriva a kingdom, he gave Vibhishan a kingdom. You please go to Ramchandraji. And then we so matlabi, huh? Why are we going to Ramchandraji? Because they got kingdoms, I'll also get kingdom. But Vibhishan's worked. That's why last week I spent that time saying, Vibhishan has really worked for Lanka. Like, if anything, he's earned kingdom of Lanka. And people loved him also. People had great respect and regard for Vibhishan. So Vibhishan now says, Ramchandraji now says to Vibhishan, you will be king of Lanka, but for now, you will be one of my ministers alongside of Sugriv. So he doesn't even give a lower position. He gives same as Sugriv. And the minute Ramchandraji says it, the monkeys accept him completely. And Sugriv also accepts him completely. Like when he first came, they all like Ravana's brother, Ravana's brother, Ravana's brother. And even Sugriv is saying, no, I don't think we should trust him, No. And then they had found 2 spies. Ravana had sent 2 spies. So and then he must be also another spy. Maybe he's double agent. I don't know if we should accept. All this was going on. Ramchandraji said, he's my minister. I accept him. He's very good. He's very good. He's very good. It's like straight away. And this is, the Vanaras had this immense trust. Like if Ramchandraji says it, it's true. If Ramchandraji says Vibhishan is good, he is good. Like you see their faith and their bhav in Bhagavan. So now I said I'll mention these two spies that came. So they get caught. So they come as Ravana spies, and then when they with the Vanaras say Jai Shri Ram for everything, right? Like getting up, sitting down. Really, that song Khate Bhi Rama Kaho, Pite Bhi Rama Kaho. The Vanaras really did that. Like everybody's like just waiting, like in the crowd, like where's Ram? Where's Ram? What's he doing now? What's he doing now? And then he smiled at me. He looked at me. That was like total fan following that the Vanaras are for Ramchandraji. And so because they keep saying Jai Shri Ram, these spies, you get swept away with the crowd, they also start saying Jai Shri Ram. And so when they say very loudly Jai Shri Ram, all the monkeys look at them. You have the mic? Yeah. And when all the monkeys look at them, so Rakshasas can change their forms, but Vanaras are not easily tricked. They all know each other. So this is another person, and who are you? And so since they didn't know who they were, they can do an anti-disguise mantra or spell. And so then, of course, they see they're not Vanaras, they're actually Rakshasas. And since they Rakshasas, they're about to beat them. Oh. You must remember these Vanaras are so excited for this war. Not because they want to fight, but because they want to be useful to Ramchandraji, right? So like they're waiting, give us a chance to do something. And so now there's 2 spies. Wow. They get so ready to beat these 2 spies up. And these 2 spies have heard the story of Shurpanakha, and so they both cover their nose and they want to cover their ears because they think that whoever gets caught by the Ramchandraji, they cut off their nose and their ears, and they're screaming, no, leave my ears, leave my nose. And so now they're screaming so loud, leave my ears, leave my nose, that it gets Lakshmana's attention. And so Lakshmana is like, what's going on here? And so all the Vanara says, they spies, let us beat them up. And he's highly amused by the Vanaras. And you think Lakshmana would be the type that, beat them up. But he's actually very compassionate. He's like, leave them. When Hanumanji went as messenger, you have to treat them as messenger, not as enemy. They're doing their job. They've come here on Ravana's word, leave them. And then he tells them, you please take back our message, my message. This is Lakshmana. He didn't even take the spies to Ramchandraji. This is his own executive decision. He gives a message to Ravana. He tells, tell Ravana, you an idiot. Exact words. This is not me adding masala. When I add masala, I tell you I'm adding masala. This is not me adding masala. Lakshman's message to Ravana is, you an idiot. And the spies are thinking, you please kill us here. Make me give this message to Ravana. No need. I'll stay here. And actually, Lakshman says, he says something else also very funny, because of course it's Lakshman, he would say something funny. He says, Your brother has come and surrendered to Ramchandraji, and if you were wise, you too would come and surrender and be like a bee hovering around Ramchandraji's feet. Like you can imagine how angry Ravana is going to get when he hears this message, huh? Like me be a bee hovering around Ramchandraji's feet. And then he says, you are inviting your death and destroying your lineage, which is exactly what happens. And so we always know that Lakshmana is very, very straightforward. So they get sent back to Lanka, and Ravana wants to hear what from the spies. Did Vibhishan get beaten? Did he learn his lesson? And what are those army doing? Are they trembling at their knees, having heard all my glories? Like delusion is like what actually happened, and what Ravana thinks is happening is really like it's phenomenal how our mind can be so incredibly deluded. But these spies, because they have been with the Vanaras and because they saw Lakshman's sense of justice, they saw how much love everyone had for Ramchandraji. And then the whole time they're comparing Ramchandraji as a leader and Ravana as a leader. And they themselves are thinking, like why we got caught as spies? We should have just stayed there and been part of Ravana's army. Ramchandraji's army. And so then courage has come into them to actually deliver this message that Lakshman has said. And they tell they tell him everything, that Ramchandraji has already called Vibhishan Lankeshwara, so your days are numbered, and Lakshman has given this message, and they are nowhere near scared of you. In fact, every Vanara in that army is capable of killing you. And the monkey that came before, he's like one of the smaller ones, which is what Hanumanji himself had said, which of course is not true. But look now that their love for Ramchandraji, that they're repeating what Hanumanji said. And to make Ravana scared. But also when they were there, Hanumanji wasn't actually doing anything. And Hanumanji was sitting quietly because until Ramchandraji gives him something to do, he doesn't, run around being restless. Whereas all the other Vanaras are very restless. And so they are like, super hyper. And so maybe they misinterpreted that Hanumanji is not, but more likely that they were doing it to make Ravana scared. And so they deliver the message and tell, and the minute they say, return Sita to Ravana, return Sita to Ramchandraji, Ravana kicks. And the same thing when Vibhishan spoke. Like he'll put up with being insulted, he'll put up with whatever. But the minute they say return Sita, he gets so angry. We even remember with Mandodari, he listened until Mandodari said, return Sita, then he walked out of the room. Yeah. Why this fixation on Sita ji? So here you must remember symbolism now. First level of symbolism is Sita ji is Lakshmi. And so, what all we do for money? Even our loved ones, we forget we love them sometimes when it comes to money. Not everyone, but we see it often enough. Sometimes a parent will pass away, and instead of grieving, like it's not even been 48 hours and they're fighting about money. Or sometimes you'll see couples getting divorced. Yeah, painful. And it's all about money. Sometimes the kids also get used just so that they can get more money. Ravana is our tendency to indulge. Remember, his 10 heads is all the senses wanting pleasure, wanting enjoyment, wanting gratification is the right word. But Ravana is also the tendency in us that wants importance. And in today's world, one of the ways to get importance is money. Sometimes even within the family, a person who holds the money becomes like this tyrant. And everybody has to listen because they want the inheritance or they want the access to that wealth. So why? Ravana's immense attachment to Sita ji is this wanting of power. And so when he's being advised, give up power. Because what did Mandodari say? I just returned Sita ji to Ramchandra ji. She didn't say bow down to him. But everyone else, Vibhishan said, surrender to Ramchandra ji. Hanumanji said, surrender to Ramchandra ji. Lakshman's letter, surrender to... No, I'm powerful. I'm surrendering to you. And sometimes this can manifest even in, I don't have to listen to you. Who are you to tell me anything? You know, nowadays in Balvia class, the kids will tell me that. I don't have to listen to you. And my reply will be, no, you don't. But you'll be listening to someone. Yeah, I listen to myself. That's still someone. It's your own mind you're listening to. And does your mind really know what's best for you? When they're 6, they're 7, they're 8, how can their minds know what's best for us? At 56, at 57, we can't trust our minds to tell us what's best for us. And we've listened to satsang. We have bowed at Guru's feet. Still our mind can take us for such a wild goose chase. That, why did I give the Balbir example? Because it's a very almost innate tendency in us. I want power. I don't have to listen to you. Nobody gets to tell me what to do. And Sita ji is power. She's not just money. She's that power. And we can get power in other ways. Money is not the only way we can get power. You see how much importance Einstein was given, because wow, he created so many things that, we use so much of the things we use today is because Einstein discovered, invented, created. Or when you sometimes if your flush is not working, who has power in that moment? You will so much your need for the plumber. When you're fulfilling needs, you also have power. And in that moment, like in the example of my flush is not working and then I need the plumber desperately, when he knows he has power or she knows she has power, they'll charge more. Like maybe I don't normally have power, but when I get given it, no. We have a very interesting relationship with power. All of us want it. So don't be deluded in thinking, no, I don't want power. I assure you, you want power. And it has to be a conscious effort for us not to give into the greed of power, because it's intoxicating. Literally intoxicated. It takes us into delusion so quickly. That's why the kids can speak like that. You can't speak like that unless you're deluded. So since it's there in us, that's why this Deena Bhaav, that this mind can become so arrogant, so careless, so disrespectful. I mean, every time we utter a word against Bhagavan, the path we are creating for ourselves. You know, even it's very clearly written in that surrender of Vibhishan, where Vibhishan says, I feel so low and unworthy because I can't feel love for you. Now, Vibhishan saying that, then what? And then Bhagavan even says, the only thing that stops us from feeling devotion is pap. When we have incurred sin, then that sin doesn't allow our heart to feel devotion. But we do, we feel devotion. And then feeling it itself is creating punya. And feeling it itself will lead to more devotion. So, but Vibhishan saying it is that understanding of the mind can flip like this. It's not that he doesn't have devotion, he's just so aware that the mind can flip like this. Even just little bit pride comes in and it pulls us down so quickly when pride comes in. So Ravana's attachment to Sita Ji is our attachment to power. And when people tell us to give it up, oh, we don't like it. Even the smallest thing, huh? And then from another point of view, Ravana represents ego. Right? And Sita Ji represents Jiva. So Jiva is that individuality that we have when we identify with our body. But ego is the sense of me. Now, for my body to function, the mind has to be connected to the body, and there has to be a sense of doing. But the sense of me and I am doing is ego. And ego is highly attached to Jiva because without Jiva, ego can't exist. Ego has nothing else to latch onto. Ego's survival is completely dependent on Jiva. And so if you tell ego, give up Jiva, that means I no longer exist. And so if you do meditate, this is a battle every meditator will face. Which battle? The ego wanting to hold on to the mind. And as seekers, we wanting to let go of the ego and surrender to Bhagavan. But ego will put up a fight. That's why that devotion is so important. And that's why that surrender is so important. Because ego will put up a fight. And so here we see that it's not just a story, and it's not Ravana is just besotted with Sita Ji's looks, and it's not just lust. There's far more to Ravana's wanting to hold on to Sita Ji. Because he's been told by people who genuinely have his welfare at heart to give her up, and he's not able to give her up. And she's not even encouraging him or entertaining him, or like, then why still hold on? So now the messengers have given their message, and then Ravana kicks them, and so then they too go back to Ravana. because they've seen it's so much nicer there. And, even we see when we let ego take charge of our lives, we see what happens in our lives. And when we let Bhagavan take charge in our lives, we've seen what happens in our lives. Only we forget. And then we go back to being deluded. So now Vibhishan has been made a minister, and so Ramchandraji says, okay, now we have to cross the ocean so that we can fight this battle with Ravana. And so how shall we cross the ocean? And Sugriva is very quiet. So he's lived far away in Kishkinda. They were not near the ocean. He has no clue, so he doesn't have any advice. And Vibhishan says, well, we can invoke Varuna Devata, the Devata in front of the sea. Lakshman gets very annoyed. Why should Ramchandraji have to meditate on some Devata? Just pull out your arrow and tell the sea to part. And then Ramchandraji tells Lakshman, don't worry, I'll do exactly that. And you were right. But Vibhishan has given a suggestion first time. So let's not discourage him. And so Ramchandraji says, like so many small ways here, you see how, number one, Bhagavan's compassion. He knows this technique is not going to work, but to help the devotee feel accepted, to help the devotee feel loved, he spends 3 days meditating. And then he says, but also you see a quality of a leader. One is Bhagavan's compassion. But like, well, who's a good leader? Take opinions, take advice, and then don't just discard it. To listen sometimes. Even if you think, no, that's not going to work, never mind, try. As long as it doesn't hurt anything, no loss is incurred, or sometimes even small loss, okay. Because how will I know? Sometimes I can be so fixated, right? And this is how it's done, and this is how it's done. So in Valmiki Ramayana, it's really seen as leadership qualities. Like so many things of how Ramchandraji behaves, he's a perfect leader. And you can tell by how much everybody loves him. In Tulsi Ramayana, he's Bhagavan. And so it's that compassion. So anyway, there's this rock, and it's still there. People still go there. Ramchandraji sits on this rock, and he is meditating. And lots of artists have drawn this also. Very nice. Now with AI, lots, even more paintings. After 3 days, he gets up and he says, Lakshman, bring me my bow and arrow. Which is all nata, because bow and arrow is right here. Ramchandraji is never without his bow and arrow. So to be like, Lakshman, bring me my bow and arrow. And he says, there is no point in trying to get a miser to be large-hearted. Then he uses 2-3 other examples. There is no point in someone who doesn't want to listen. There is no point in talking to someone who doesn't want to listen. And so 3 days we've tried, and they're not listening, they're not understanding this language, and so we have to use a language that they were going to understand. And Bhagavan has taken his bow, he's pulled out the arrow. He's only just pulled out the arrow, huh? All the creatures in the ocean start burning. And when Bhagavan wants to show anger, you will feel it. And it is, right? Like suffering feels like burning. And then immediately, Varuna Devata comes up. Now, it is said that when the spies went to Ravana, they had already said Ramchandraji is meditating to Varun Devata to get passage over the ocean. Ravana had really solidly bullied the Devatas. So not in Tulsi Ramayana, in one of the other Ramayans, it's explained that Ravana had already threatened Varun Devata that if you go, you'll have to deal with me. So yeah, now Ramchandraji is threatening Ravana's poor Varun Devata. Everyone's threatening him. But having given the choice, everybody will rather choose Ramchandraji's arrow, which is what Varun Devata does. So yeah, it's not Varun Devata having pride. In this, if it's actually Ravana that had already bullied him. Or it really could be Varun Devata's arrogance. If it wasn't Ravana, then it was Varun Devata's arrogance. That's it. Ramchandraji has to ask me for passage. Which, of course, the minute pride comes, disaster. And so in Tulsi Ramayana, Varun Devata thanks Bhagavan for breaking that pride. And so even there you see that wonderful surrender. And it's such a nice thing when we can be thankful that our pride is broken. Because otherwise, when our pride is broken, oh, ouch. They become so bitter. We can become so bitter, spiteful, just petty. Like when we have power and then power is taken away, and then things we say are just so unbecoming. But here, Varun Devata is thanking Bhagavan for breaking his pride. And then another version of this we've heard is, Varun Devata says, if the rocks have your name on it, I will let them float. There's different versions here. Nal and Neel are in the army. They have a boon that whatever rocks they put in water will float. And so they have to put all the rocks are gathered, but they're the ones that are putting it in the ocean. But definitely Varun Devata does take Nala and Neel's name because they were engineers. So interesting, huh? To build a bridge, you need engineers. Nal and Neel designed this bridge. We think it's just rocks in water. But the fact that they are particularly pointed out to be engineers, there's much more going on in the Ramayana than we can understand. Otherwise, put rocks in water, Varun Devata will bring them together. Why do you need engineers? But specifically, Nala and Neela had to design the bridge. And then in Valmiki Ramayana, but in the other Ramayana, it is said that when the rocks had Ramchandraji's name, then those rocks will float. And the idea is that it's the ocean of samsara. We've spoken about this before. Even when Hanumanji had to cross, Hanumanji was crossing ocean of samsara. Here too now, not just one Hanumanji crossing, the entire Vanara Sena has to cross the ocean of samsara. So how will they cross? What helps us cross? Ocean of samsara. Hanumanji too, when he jumped, he said, Jai Shri Ram. Ram's name alone is what helps us cross ocean of samsara. Elsewhere, it is beautifully poetically said that Ram's name builds the boat, which then we can take refuge in this ocean of samsara. Because if you actually in the ocean, it's exhausting. I don't know if you've actually swam in the ocean and you can't touch the floor and you have to just keep treading, or you get tired so quickly. And the currents then really just pull you, and it can be so scary also. And so to have a boat You're still in the ocean, but at least you're not inside. And so Ram's name is what? Builds this boat. Any mantra. Here it's Ramayana, so it's Ram's name, but any mantra, any name of Bhagavan builds this boat that helps us to have some refuge in the ocean of samsara. But here it's a bridge. It's not just bopping on the top of the ocean of samsara, getting some relief from it, which also mantra does. But here it's the bridge. Ram's name builds the bridge by which we can cross the ocean of samsara. And so there's this other story which is really beautiful. It is said that while the bridge was being, you all know the story, so I haven't said. They took the rocks, they wrote Ram into it on the rocks, and then they took those rocks and threw it in the water, and those rocks float. And till today, if you go to Rameshwar, which is in Chennai, there's some of those rocks are there, and they still floating. So they're huge, huh? They're not small rocks, they're huge rocks. Like those Vanaras really were massive, because if they could hold those rocks, they were definitely very strong. And other rocks don't float. But the ones that were taken from the bridge, those ones still today float. So while this is all going on, Ramchandraji has this thought of, like, wow, really these rocks are floating with my name on them? And the Vanaras, remember, they have all this energy and this enthusiasm. So they thought, like, happily Ram, and then marching along and throwing it. And they're so busy and they're so task orientated, because finally now they have something to do. And so Ramchandraji is not allowed to do anything. If he even tried to pick up, you cannot do anything. So he's just watching and supervising this whole thing. And so he has this thought in his head that, wow, they're floating with my name. What would happen if I only put the rocks? They're not letting me, but So he walks away to this very corner bit area where he makes sure nobody else is watching. And he takes one rock and then he thinks, like, okay, so. And he drops it in the ocean. And immediately it sinks. And then again, he quickly checks, like, is anyone watching? And of course, Hanumanji is there. Because, Hanumanji is always going to be there. He follows Ramchandraji around. Ramchandraji is wondering, what does he need? I'll make sure his daughter doesn't need anything. And so Ramchandraji asked Hanuman, did you see? But no ego here, right? Ramchandraji doesn't have that energy. So he frowns his face and he said, how come, Hanuman? Like, with my name, the rocks are floating. And Hanumanji says, but it's obvious, you're just testing me, right? But if you let go of someone, they'll definitely sink. But if you hold someone, they'll rise. And so this writing of Ram on these rocks is actually our reminder to ourselves that he's holding us. And not just us, he's holding the whole world. Everything's being held by Ramchandraji only. Bhagavan only is holding everything where it should be. And so the Vanaras are building this beautiful bridge by putting these rocks in the ocean, and they are floating. I've read also in other Ramayans where they say that how many rocks could the Vanaras have collected and how long it will take, because the distance isn't short from India to Sri Lanka. And then poor Sita ji is waiting for Ramchandra ji to come. How long is this going to take? So all the sea creatures actually are helping. Not only are they bringing the rocks so that they're together, but like the bigger creatures, like the whales, have lined up alongside the rocks so that they can be part of the bridge. And so if you see now, NASA has this picture of the bridge. And the bridge is actually quite small. But the bridge was bigger, but it was because all the creatures from the ocean, also wanting to serve Ramchandraji, had come together to build this bridge. And the yagna spirit, the word yagna means coming together, working together. And how do we know we really have yagna spirit? Nature will also contribute to that yagna spirit. Like when we have enough collective intention for something that is beneficial, then nature also contributes. And so that's not said as often, that all the sea creatures came. So it would be so cool, right? Like so many people's bucket list, swimming with the dolphins, see the whales. Yeah, all of them came. The dolphins came, the turtles came, the whales came. All these sea creatures came to be a part of the bridge and to help the Vanaras cross the bridge. There's that Japanese animation of the Ramayana, and this scene is done so cute. The monkeys building the bridge is done so cute, and it's in time lapse, so the bridge gets built very quickly, and then all the monkeys line up behind Ramchandraji, and then he leads the way to cross this. And he does lead the way, right? If this is the ocean of samsara, remember what's the ocean of samsara? Constant change. Life is just constantly changing. We get older, circumstances change, our mind, this mood comes, now that mood comes, and then I'm so good and I'm so disciplined and I'm doing it for like a whole year, 2 years, 3 years, and then something happens and the mind flips. And I don't do anymore. This constant change, like this, and also this constant wanting, Bhavasaga. So how to cross the ocean of samsara, hold on to Ramchandraji's name and follow him. Let him lead. When we say let him lead, that's turning to scriptures to give us the guidance on how to think, how to act, how to speak. To keep that as priority, which we spoke about in an earlier class. And so this bridge gets built. And the bridge is one of the most well-known examples of the glory of Ramchandraji's name. And usually when we speak about Bhagavan's name, then examples will be given that because of his presence, stone turned to Ahalya became back to her normal state. Inert became sentient. And because of Ramchandraji, stones floated in the ocean to create this bridge. And with this bridge getting concluded, Sundarkand ends. Now, Sundarkand is the chapter in the Ramayana dedicated to Hanumanji. Actually, the name Sundarkand just means that it's beautiful. It doesn't specifically refer to Hanumanji, but because in this Sundarkand we have Hanumanji crossing the ocean, Hanumanji reaching Lanka, Hanumanji giving Sitaji the message. Like there's so much of Hanumanji's action-packed adventures in Sundarkand that often to worship Hanumanji, Sundarkand is read, or Hanuman Chalisa is read, and Sankat Mochan. In the north, these are the three most popular in terms of Hanuman Bhakti: Sankat Mochan, Sundarkand, and Hanuman Chalisa. And so in Tulsi Ramayana, it said, even just reading this chapter opens the heart to have more devotion and brings punya. So even if you don't hear the whole Ramayana, and you just hear only Sundarkand, and there's so much punya in that. And we've just today finished Sundarkand. Sundarkand ends with this building of the bridge. And then after that, Lanka's Kand starts. And even though the bridge is built, and I've said that they followed, Lanka Kand actually starts with, before crossing the bridge, Ramchandraji builds a shivling with the sand of the ocean. And before starting that journey, he worships the shivling. And that shivling is now the Rameshwar temple in Chennai. So it's still there. The shivling that he himself built to do the worship is now solidified over a period of time. It's not sand anymore. And in the Vedic culture, before taking any trip, Lord Shiva is always invoked. So there's a special stotra. I forget what it's called. I remember the tune though. Do you remember what it's called? Shambho Mahadeva Deva Shiva Shambho Mahadeva Deva Shambho. We Google. It's the stotram that you sing before taking a trip. In today's world, we take trip like we take bus. But thanks to Spotify and YouTube, we can just play it, right? In the car on the way to the airport. It was going on a journey. Lord Shiva is always invoked. Because symbolically, this life itself is a journey. We forget that. We think this is life, ta-da, finish. But this is not life. Life is journey. We're traveling to death. Like if we think about this logically, you're going to agree with me. That's where we're traveling to, right? And in this journey, we don't get to choose when we reach destination, how fast we go. It will come. We don't know when, but it will come. And so Shiva, Devata for destruction, death. And so we invoke him. Why? Because if I remember that life is journey and death is but change, and journey will continue, then death is not so horrendous. Also, if I invoke Shiva, and Shiva's with me through my journey. Now, if you think of that in terms of life, Shiva is with me through my journey. Even at death, nobody else can be with me, but Bhagavan's with me. And so we invoke Bhagavan before, because he alone stays with us. And then sometimes Maybe it's not a journey. Maybe just something is happening in my life. And genuinely, there's so many people around who love me and support me. But my pain is still my pain. Like nobody can take the pain away. They can be there with me while I go through the pain, but they can't take away the pain. But Bhagavan is not like another person who's there with me. Bhagavan is in me. Like the being able to offload the pain to Bhagavan is very different to offloading pain to a person. And so that reminder that life's a journey and the only constant that we have is Bhagavan. And so this stotram is usually sung before we take a journey. Maybe that's why Ramchandraji built Shivling and did worship to Shivji first before starting on the bridge. That's the first chapter of the next Ganda. But also we see throughout the Puranas, Ramayana comes in Bhagavatam, which is a much bigger Purana, and it's shorter in Bhagavatam, and therefore it gets taken more elaborately as its own topic, Ramayana, separate to Bhagavatam. But it belongs to Bhagavatam as all of Vishnu's avatars. Ramchandraji is one of Vishnu's avatar. And it's a constant theme in the Bhagavatam that Bhagavan Vishnu worships Shiva and Bhagavan Shivji worships Vishnu. And this is a constant reminder to us that there's only one. Now, here in Hong Kong, we don't see much of it. But in India, you can have these like two very distinct camps, Shaivites and Vaishnavites. And they recognize each other by the tilak. They won't even talk to each other. It's so silly. It's like these people who are football fans and they won't talk to the opposite team people. It's like how our mind can become so small and so petty so quickly. Like here am I devoted to Bhagavan and then no. Then they still Hindu only. But still, no. It's ridiculous. Oneness. Shivji is Vishnu, Vishnu is Shivji because it is formless, it is nameless. There can be no constraints on who Bhagavan is. And so whichever form it is that you are attached to, in the stories of the Puranas, there's constant reminder that that form itself worships and invokes all other forms. And so we too should not be so fixated. So before the battle starts, Ramchandraji worships Surya Devata, Aditya Hridayam. And then he does Devi Puja because Mother Kali needed her Shakti for the battle. And so we see that here it's, if we understand Hinduism in terms of the Puranic culture, then every aspect of divinity is playing out what it needs to. But also, the Devatas are just aspects of divinity, and divinity in its entirety is only one truth. Indivisible, unchangeable, indestructible. Okay, we pause here for today. Any questions?
Lanka is Sri Lanka.
Lanka is Sri Lanka. Yeah. After the story of the Ramayana got told, people started treating the people in Lanka very badly. Yeah. It was like your Ravana's descendants. And so Shri got added to Lanka to help. But they also Vibhishan's descendants. And Vibhishan was so beautiful. And Lanka was built by Shivji. It's apparently stunningly beautiful. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukhabhag bhavet, asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityurma gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Shri Guru.